I am a little mute who was abandoned by a wealthy family and left to fend for myself in an ancient town. One day, I accidentally picked up a tall and handsome alpha. Too bad he's a big fool. They say that the little mute and the big fool are a good match. So I brought him home, and naturally we started dating. But one day, the big fool was no longer stupid. Through the crack in the door, I saw his brows were stern, his expression was indifferent, and his voice was sharp. Do you think I would like a mute? Of course. There are countless high-quality omegas around you, young master. I suddenly felt like I fell into an icy cave and my whole body was cold. She decisively hid the pregnancy certificate and ran away. Not long after, he was caught by the family and sent for marriage. Inside the room, the alpha trapped me at the head of the bed, a familiar face approaching. Dangerous and sinister look. Spencer, where are you taking my baby? 1. The first time I met Adrian was on a misty afternoon. In the quiet ancient town, there was suddenly some noise ahead. I walked over and saw neighbors gathered around a strange man, talking about something. He was a tall and handsome alpha. He was wearing ill-fitting long clothes and trousers, and had a few scratches on his face, looking a little disheveled, but it still couldn't hide his outstanding appearance. There is one more thing. Alpha's eyes were dull and lifeless. His hands were moving awkwardly unconsciously, and his face had a silly look that did not match his age. I took out a small notebook, wrote a sentence on it, and then handed it to the person next to me. Lucy, what happened? Oh, Spencer is here. Lucy patted me and explained. Here comes a fool. I don't know if he got lost or was abandoned. He won't answer anything I ask him. He's not willing to go to the police station either. I raised my eyes and met the gaze of the alpha who was looking over at me. The other person's eyebrows and eyes were deep, and there was a look of ignorant inquiry and amazement in his eyes. Hey, isn't Spencer still in need of a date? Why don't you just take him home? Even though he's a little silly, he's handsome. Someone said to me jokingly. Amid the noise of the crowd, the man took a few steps towards me. Somehow I brought the person home. I can't speak. When I was worrying about how to communicate with him, I tentatively wrote a sentence to him and found that he could understand it. He can read and speak clearly, but his words and actions are like those of a child, naive and childish. There is an awkward ignorance in his every move. Just like communicating with others, I wrote down sentences in a small notebook and talked to him. Where are you from? Do you have any family? Family? Alpha tilted his head, as if thinking, I don't know, they're gone. My heart trembled, and a guess came to my mind. Could it be that he was abandoned by his family because of his defects, just like me? So I asked, did they abandon you? No, don't want me anymore. May I have your name? He stared at me without blinking. I nodded and told him, my name is Spencer. I am not a native resident here. He was driven out by his family 3 years ago and came to this ancient town in the south of the Yangtze River by chance and settled down there. By chance, she became an apprentice and learned the intangible cultural heritage of Suzhou embroidery, and has survived to this day by relying on this craft. I live in the ancient town. The house is not big, with only 1 bedroom. Fortunately, the bed is big enough for the 2 of us to sleep in, each with a quilt. I told Adrian that he could live here with me from now on. Even though he wouldn't become rich, he would have enough food and drink. The man was very happy, with a big smile on his face and his eyes surprisingly bright. 2. With one more person, the house becomes more lively. Most of the time, I would stay in the workshop embroidering, mainly scarves and round fans. When he saw me embroidering for the first time, Adrian sat quietly by the side and watched, full of curiosity. As I continued to move, Adrian's face gradually showed surprise, and he opened his eyes wide and praised, very good, like a child who knows nothing about the world. Spencer, you are awesome. He insisted on calling me Spencer. Maybe in his mind it sounded more intimate that way. Adrian is quite clingy. If he doesn't see me for more than 10 minutes, he will anxiously look for me, calling Spencer all the time. I couldn't say anything, so I had to appear in front of him as quickly as possible when he came to me. Like me, he longed for company. Despite his immaturity, Adrian was quite skillful. When he was with me in the workshop, he would help me organize my tools and hand me materials in a timely manner. At the beginning, I was not very skilled and made many mistakes due to my impatience. Later, I gradually became familiar with the job and became adept at it. I actually did a pretty good job and could barely be considered a qualified little assistant. He is very considerate and does not interrupt me when I am working. But when I was resting or eating, I would chirp like a little sparrow and ask me a lot of questions. Even though I can only communicate with him through a small notebook, he still enjoys doing it. One day, he asked me, "Spencer, why can't you speak?" Because I was injured before. I was not born mute. My vocal cords were damaged in an accident a few years ago. I missed the best time for treatment and have been unable to speak since then. Adrian pouted, seeming a little sad. Then he clenched his fists and said seriously, "From now on, I will protect Spencer and Spencer won't get hurt." My heart feels a little sour. I know this is just a promise made by Alpha when he was mentally handicapped, and it doesn't count. But this is the first time someone has said something like this to me, and it's inevitable that I feel touched. 3. I bought Adrian a lot of fairy tale books so that he can read them when he is bored and he doesn't have to stay with me in the workshop all the time. But I never expected that these fairy tales would become Adrian's bedtime reading. Well, he read them to me. On a distant planet, there is a star called Little Star. He is very lonely because he has no star friends to play with him. Alpha's voice is cold, low, and magnetic, but it has a childlike rhythmic, innocent, and lively tone, which completely removes the coldness and sounds pleasant and soothing. From that day on, Little Star and his star friends lit up the night sky. I fell into a deep sleep listening to Adrian's gentle and soft voice. Every morning when I open my eyes, the first person I see is Adrian. Either his peaceful sleeping face or his serious face when he looks at me with his eyes open without blinking. The ancient town is not highly commercialized, but there are tourists coming here every day. I would choose 1 or 2 days every week to set up a stall on the street to sell things. When I was learning this craft, my master praised me for my talent and said that the things I embroidered were delicate and full of spirit. As a result, my business is pretty good, and I'm even a little famous, with customers willing to travel thousands of miles to patronize me. After Adrian arrived, there was one more person at the stall. He would excitedly and proudly promote my products to tourists who stopped by, and when others bargained, he would say, "This is made by Spencer himself. It's priceless." Everyone would be amused by him and be happy to buy it. Soon, everyone around me knew that the big fool Alpha following me was my super fan. For life in the ancient town is stable and leisurely. An uncle gave me the TV that was discarded from his home. In the evening, Adrian and I would sit on the small sofa and watch TV. Like most boys, Adrian also has a dream of being a hero and loves Ultraman very much. When seeing something exciting, he would stand up and learn to transform and emit light with a serious expression. When I took out my cell phone to take a picture of him with a smile, he worked even harder. He is born handsome and looks like a protagonist. After getting to know each other for 4 weeks, Adrian would sometimes go out to play and bring me delicious and fun things. I consider myself a hardworking person, except for my habit of sleeping in. Now, every morning when I wake up, I will be greeted by a steaming hot breakfast. Alpha sat patiently at the dining table, and when he saw me, he gave me a silly but sincere smile. "Morning, Spencer." "Good morning, Adrian." "Thank you." It's wrong to always let Adrian buy things for me. I thought so, but ate with gusto. One bright afternoon, Adrian stared at me for a long time with burning eyes. Seeing that he was still silent, I wrote down, "What happened?" Alpha hesitated and blushed, and finally said, "Spencer, can we kiss?" Seeing that I didn't respond for a while, he continued, "They said that I am your Alpha, and that if we want to get married in the future, we should kiss and hug each other to cultivate our relationship." After thinking about it, I said to him, "These things should be done with the person you like." He was very sure. "I like Spencer." No one would have the heart to reject such sincere and warm heart. Finally, I just wrote a few words. "I'm not ready yet." 5. After that, Adrian would ask me one question every day. Spencer, are you ready? Once in the morning, once at noon, and once at night. Never forget. The drizzle is as fine as silk, lightly sprinkling on the blue waves, creating a hazy mist, like a flowing ink painting. Adrian and I sat on the pontoon boat, swaying along the river, enjoying the quiet and peaceful moment. He stayed close to me, taking my hand in his and squeezing and kneading it. The look in his eyes was direct and sincere. Spencer, are you ready? I watched him dazed, and my heart was beating like the rain. He nodded and gave a different answer than before. The alpha pressed his hot lips against yours. He kissed her eagerly and without any method, and it was obvious that he had no experience. But he still kissed me so hard that my whole body went limp and my heart was beating wildly. He even bit my lips lightly before pulling away. Spencer, you're so sweet. Adrian hugged me tightly and smiled happily. From this kiss, our relationship became closer and closer, and it became uncontrollable. We shared the same quilt, and he would hold me to sleep every night. He became more and more clingy, and kissing and hugging me became the norm. And I gradually fell into this unreserved care. To be fair, I like him. His heart and eyes are full of me, and he is so good to me, the best I have ever felt. His arrival added a lot of liveliness and popularity to my silent and dull home. I hope I can see him every day when I open my eyes, and I hope he can be with me forever. 6. The little mute and the big fool are in love. All the neighbors in the ancient town who had taken good care of me knew about this. While sincerely congratulating them, I noticed a hint of pity and sympathy in their eyes. I understand that life is generally not going to be easy for two disabled people to live together. But I don't think so. I like my current life very much. With peace and stability and company, every day is fulfilling. Love doesn't have to be passionate and eventful. I feel very happy with such ordinary days. When I opened my eyes early this morning, I was held in Adrian's arms as usual. The big hands around the waist were hot and powerful. Adrian's low and confused voice sounded in his ears. Spencer, it hurts? At the same time, I felt a hot sensation on my buttocks. The sleepiness disappeared completely. Alpha said in an innocent and aggrieved tone. It's standing up, what should I do? The cool minty scent permeated the air, touching and caressing me as if it had life. I took a deep breath and felt my skin burning. Turning around to face Adrian, that handsome face enlarged in front of my eyes, making my heart skip a beat. I looked up, blinked at him, and then kissed him on the lips. In response, the other person penetrated me more fiercely and stroked me more quickly and unbearably. The scent of jasmine wafts through the air, entwining and blending with the mint flavor. I don't know how long it was before Adrian took hold of the soft flesh on the back of my neck and licked and kissed it. My glands were treated in this way, and I couldn't help but tremble all over, surrounded by a strange and stimulating feeling. The sharp canine teeth finally bit through the gland, piercing the soft flesh and injecting pheromones. I can't pronounce the syllables. His eyes were blurry, and he could only let out a few short, cat-like moans with his mouth slightly open. Mark the end. Adrian hugged me, stroking my back with his big hands, and then he put his hands on my neck and blew gently on the small bulge. At last, he coaxed her like a child. Be good, Spencer. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. I closed my eyes and fell asleep again peacefully in the mint scent. 7. Although it was just a temporary mark, I could feel that I was becoming more and more dependent on Adrian. I always subconsciously look for his figure and can't help wanting to get closer and closer to him. At first I was embarrassed and ashamed. But for me, who has been marked by Alpha, his aura attracts me all the time. I couldn't bear it any longer, so I simply wrote a sentence in a small notebook, lowered my head and held it in front of my head to show Adrian. Adrian, can you stay with me for a while? Adrian seemed extremely pleased and excited about my reaction. He held me in his arms and kissed me, calling me wife over and over again, continuously releasing pheromones to soothe me. I have good reason to suspect that Adrian is gifted at intimacy. The hugs and kisses are becoming more and more skillful and always make me dizzy after they are over. Alpha's susceptible period comes suddenly and violently. The rich mint scent filled the entire room. Adrian held me tightly in his arms, buried his head in my neck and sniffed deeply. Spencer, Spencer, my dear wife. His breath was hot and his whispers were filled with need. Those dark and clear eyes were tinged with a faint red, and his whole body felt hot. Surrounded by such strong pheromones, I felt my body getting hotter and softer, and I was actually affected and entered the fever period. The alpha followed with a fierce, rapid kiss. I subconsciously reached out and climbed onto his broad shoulders. Collision, surge. There was mist in his eyes and unformed hoarse syllables came out of his mouth. Indulge in the charming and tender sea of desire with a man. The pheromones of jasmine and mint are intertwined and blended, lingering for a long time. Adrian is really gifted at this kind of thing. For 3 whole days and 3 nights, except for eating and going to the toilet, he almost always pressed me on the bed and tossed me over and over. When I woke up from my deep sleep, it was already the afternoon of the 4th day. Alpha's susceptible period is finally over. My body was still weak, as if it was falling apart. I lay listlessly on the bed, not wanting to move at all. Adrian bought me a lot of food and fed me with his own hands. The pain and guilt in his eyes were clearly visible. I leaned in his arms, and my heart felt sweet. On my birthday, I bought a cake on a whim and took it home to eat with Adrian. In the past, I was always alone and had no interest in it. Now I have someone to accompany me. Adrian can no longer remember his own birthday, so let's just treat today as our shared birthday. I also bought him a gift, an authentic Ultraman Zero transformation device. The cake was very sweet and delicious. We also lit candles and made a wish. As soon as he opened his eyes, Adrian couldn't wait to tell me his wish. I want to be with Spencer forever. The candlelight illuminated his face, making his handsome features look so gentle. I laughed. The two of them stayed up very late that day. When I fell asleep, I felt Adrian put something around my neck and kissed me on the forehead. Spencer, this is for you. Happy birthday. I was so sleepy that I closed my eyes and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up the next day, I saw a jade ring hanging around my neck. The material feels very good, warm and delicate, as if it has condensed thousands of years of moonlight, revealing a noble and mysterious atmosphere. I asked Adrian where it came from and he said he always had it with him. I stared at the ring in a daze, and suddenly a strange feeling arose in my heart. A little, strangely uneasy. 9. The days go by as usual. I was watching TV with Adrian that night, and when I was changing the channel, I unexpectedly saw Brandon on the screen, who was as handsome as a prince. My half-brother. Unlike me who was abandoned, he was a real young master who was pampered and born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I jumped off the stage without changing my expression and subconsciously leaned towards Adrian. He took me in his arms and rested his chin on my hair. Spencer, are you cold? You won't be cold if I hold you. I originally thought that I would live a peaceful and stable life like this forever. That day, I went out alone to buy ingredients. Suddenly, I felt a spasm in my lower abdomen and a dull pain. I think about how I have had no appetite recently and occasionally feel headache, nausea, and chest tightness. Since I was already out, I might as well go to the hospital. The test results were unexpected yet reasonable. I was pregnant. The baby is 3 weeks old. All the way home, I felt a bit unreal and dizzy. I have a baby, my baby with Adrian. After a few months, the house will be filled with babbling sounds. We will become a family of 3. I quickened my pace, eager to tell Adrian the news. How would he react? 10. But when I got home, I heard a strange voice coming from the slightly open door. Master, when will you return to the capital? A familiar voice sounded. Recently. Through the crack in the door, I saw a man in a suit with a respectful look standing in front of Adrian. And Adrian, the big fool I am very familiar with. At this moment, he was sitting on the chair lazily and dignifiedly, with all the stupidity on his face gone. His eyebrows were stern, his expression was indifferent. His handsome features revealed a bit of impatience, and his whole body exuded a cold aura that kept strangers away. The man asked again, Do you want to take the person you live with back home? Adrian raised his eyes, glanced at him nonchalantly, and said in a sharp voice, "Do you think I would like a mute? Of course. There are countless high-quality omegas around you, young master." I was stunned, as if countless cold air was rushing into my body from the soles of my feet, and all the blood in my body was frozen. I didn't hear what they said afterwards. He moved his feet and left home like a puppet. After wandering around aimlessly outside for a long time, I returned home again. It was quiet inside, and Adrian was not there. With a sigh of relief, I walked in and calmly gathered my things. I packed quickly and took only what was necessary. Before leaving, she thought for a moment, took off the ring on her neck and placed it in a conspicuous place, and then took away a fairy tale book that she had read with Adrian. Just think of it as a keepsake. I'd rather leave with dignity than be left behind again. I casually bought a ticket and got on the train with my few luggages, just wanting to go as far as possible. In fact, everything has a traceable path. Whether it was him who suddenly appeared, or the jade ring that looked very valuable. It's just that I am selfish and greedy, and I only hope for that little possibility. When I opened my phone, I couldn't help but click on the photo album. The whole screen was filled with Adrian smiling at me. The suppressed emotions emerged belatedly, the grievance, discomfort, and grief that were stuck in my chest, mixed together and almost made it difficult for me to breathe. Click, click. Tears fell on the screen, blurring his face. I am a mute who is hated by everyone. At this point, I can only cry silently and cowardly. But I clearly was going to have a complete family. 11. Leaving Adrian was harder than I thought. I couldn't sleep at night and couldn't eat anything during the day. Without the comfort of Alpha's pheromones, I feel tormented by an inexplicable uneasiness at all times. Can't muster the energy to do anything. Occasional abdominal pain also seems to indicate that the baby is unhappy. I forced myself to eat. I still have a baby, and I want him to be born safely. This muddled life lasted for about 2 weeks. What I didn't expect was that their people came to my door. They took me home without saying anything. After a long time, I saw that cold face again, my biological father Gavin. I didn't have the notebook with me, so I used sign language to signal him. "What are you going to do?" Naturally, he had never learned sign language, so he couldn't understand what I said. With the same impatience and disdain on his face, he said, "That's all you're good for." He said, "That person specifically asked for you. Was he attracted by your face?" Later, I accidentally found out that Gavin was going to send me to an arranged marriage. That's ridiculous. I've never even met that guy. Having gone to so much trouble to bring me home, this marriage will definitely be a good one. But why? I am a child who was abandoned by Gavin a long time ago. Now he wants to sacrifice himself for the sake of profit? I don't agree. We have severed our relationship long ago. I am not a member of your family, and you have no right to decide my marriage. I want to leave here. I either use sign language or write with a pen or my phone to express my resistance. But it was no use. Gavin wouldn't let me leave and ignored my resistance. He hired someone to watch me and not allow me to step out of the house. I was alone, helpless, and had no way to fight him. 12. 2 days later, Brandon came into my room with a haughty look on his face. That handsome face was full of disdain and contempt. "Your face is attractive, but what's the point of marrying him? It's impossible for him to like someone else, let alone a mute like you. Just wait for him to play you to death." Brandon looked at me with a wicked smile on his face. He didn't like me in the first place, so he was naturally happy to have the chance to take advantage of me. I ignored him. Based on past experience, the more you pay attention to him, the more excited he gets, and it never ends. Gavin has been warning me lately, both explicitly and implicitly, to be obedient and not to even think about escaping the marriage. He seemed to be wary of my so-called marriage partner. I don't know who that is, and I don't want to know. Anyway, I don't want to marry him. When Gavin was giving me another long lecture, I told him, "I have been marked by the alpha and have a child." The hypocritical face froze, and anger gradually crept up on it. Gavin swept the teacup to the ground with a loud bang. A few drops of hot tea splashed on the back of my hand, causing a stinging sensation. I looked at him calmly without changing my expression. "Shame on you." He pointed at me and scolded me. "You just mess around all day long." Brandon was there too, and he laughed so hard that tears came out when he heard the news. He said to me with a gloating look, "You are done." Gavin still didn't change his decision to let me get married. Here, they don't treat me harshly in terms of food, clothing, and other expenses. I didn't want to see the two of them, so I just stayed in my room every day and didn't go out. I comforted myself that I still had a chance. If I met the marriage partner in the future, I could just confess my situation to him. No one would be willing to marry a pregnant Omega who was marked for life. When the night is quiet, I always think of the peaceful and happy days in the ancient town not long ago. There is only me reflected in Alpha's eyes, and the warmth in his arms is just right, making me feel at ease. But in the dream, that gentle face turned cold as ice. I can't possibly like a mute. 13. Stayed at home for half a month. That day, a few people suddenly came and took me away. The leader looked young and was wearing a black suit. Not knowing his identity, Gavin was extremely respectful to him. I could roughly guess that he was going to meet his marriage partner, so I didn't resist, and followed them quietly to a mansion. It is very big and luxurious. I have never seen such a magnificent house. It is not an exaggeration to call it a castle. Surprisingly, the people inside were very friendly to me. "Welcome, young master." Someone came up to us and took the luggage as we entered the room. "Just give it to us." I subconsciously signed. "Thank you." "You're welcome. What would you like to eat?" "Just whatever you want. I'm not picky." "Okay," she said. "Just call me Molly. My husband has something to do today and won't be back until later." I was surprised that she could understand sign language. I didn't see the man until the evening, from being anxious and cautious at the beginning to gradually relaxing now. This place doesn't seem as bad as I thought. At least for now, they are all very nice to me. In the room, the bed under my butt was big and soft. After sitting for a while, no one came. I turned on my phone and saw that it was almost midnight. Sleepiness came over me, so I lay down on the bed, closed my eyes, and fell asleep. In a trance, I seemed to fall into that familiar, warm embrace again. This sleep was surprisingly sound. When I opened my eyes, I saw Adrian's angular face. Like so many mornings before, I blinked blankly and realized that I was still dreaming. It was such a real dream. I could even smell his cool and soothing mint pheromones. My body relaxed after a long time. Soon, the alpha opened his eyes. A sleepy me is reflected in those ink-black eyes. Since this is a dream, it doesn't matter if I do something, right? With that in mind, I put an arm around his neck, moved closer, and buried my head in his chest. I actually miss him very much. Even if I heard that he didn't like me, those memories, every bit of our time together, would still come to my mind from time to time, bringing with it an excitement and nostalgia that is difficult to ignore. "Spencer." I felt those hands falling on the back of my head, stroking it gently. "Good morning. What do you want to eat?" "I'll ask Auntie to make it." A deep voice came from above my head, and I could even feel the slight vibration in his chest from speaking. My brain and senses gradually became clear after waking up, my memory came back, and I finally realized this was not a dream. Almost subconsciously, I pushed the man away and stepped out of his arms. Then he quickly sat up, clutched the quilt with one hand, and looked at the person in front of him nervously. "Are you having a nightmare?" He looked at me, frowning. "Don't be afraid, husband. Give me a hug." As he said that, he reached out his hand to me, trying to pull me back into his arms. I stepped back to avoid him. 14. I can feel that Adrian has really changed for the better and is not stupid anymore. There was an innate coldness between his brows, and his whole temperament was completely different from his previous harmless and foolish appearance. But why does he still speak to me in such a gentle tone? I don't understand. I pursed my lips. Without caring whether he could understand or not, she signed, "Stay away from me." His face suddenly darkened. "Impossible. He came closer without saying a word, grabbed my wrist with one hand, and trapped me on the head of the bed. There was danger in those dark eyes. "Spencer, where are you taking my baby?" I opened my eyes wide. Why would he know? "You are not him." I broke free from his hand and gestured. "How come I'm not one?" The man approached and pointed to a mark on the exposed collarbone. "Look, you bit it." He was shirtless and wore only knee-length shorts. The muscle lines are smooth and clear, full of wild beauty. After the past few days and nights, we were already very familiar with each other's bodies. When I woke up and saw it just now, I didn't realize anything was wrong. Hearing him say this, I suddenly felt embarrassed. After hesitating for a while, I continued, "He likes Ultraman." A hint of barely perceptible shame and anger appeared on that face that was so beautiful that it made people lose their minds. But soon, his expression returned to normal. "You're right. I just like it. I still have the transformation device you gave me. Do you want to see it?" This has got me totally screwed. After a moment's silence, I decided to just give up. "I heard everything you said to that person that day." I gestured, and at the same time, a strong bitterness rose in my heart. "You are right. I am just a mute. It's normal that you don't like me." But before she could finish her words, he pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. I couldn't see his expression, but the alpha whispered lovingly in his ear, "You are my Spencer, my baby, my only wife." Liar. He clearly didn't say that before. I tried to push Adrian, but he held me too tightly and I couldn't break free. "I'm sorry, baby Spencer." He kissed my earlobe. "He's not one of my men, and I said those things just to make him let his guard down. The master's family was not at peace before, but it's all resolved now. What I said that day was not sincere." Her voice was naturally cold and clear, but now it was filled with a hint of weakness and grievance. "But everything I said to you before, every word was from the heart. I like you very much. Spencer, you didn't come home for a long time that day. I went out to look for you, but I couldn't find you. When I got home and found you gone, do you know how worried and sad I was at that time? I was stunned, not knowing how to react for a moment. Is what he said true? Can I trust him? My mind clearly tells me not to believe it easily. But the pounding heart and the joy that was about to burst out still exposed my subconscious emotions. I am very happy. I was so happy to hear that he really liked me. Adrian hugged me for a long time. After letting go, he kissed my forehead, nose, cheeks, lips, just like countless times before, intimate and natural. He kissed me so hard that my whole body felt hot. After finally stopping, he held me tightly again and wouldn't let go. Thinking of something, I asked, "Can you understand sign language?" "Yeah." He curled his lips. "I learned it recently, so it's for me." 15. Later, I gradually realized that he is now the ruler and head of the capital's #1 family, with enormous power. It is said that he is sinister, cruel, and moody. He is cold-hearted and unsympathetic. He is a business tycoon in the capital who can cover the sky with one hand. Anyone who offends him will have a bad ending. He is known as the cold-faced king. I looked at Adrian, who was doing his best to take care of me personally. I feel that this statement is biased and must have been fabricated by his enemies. He is actually very gentle and treats me as well as before. Alpha is no longer stupid. He no longer imitates transformations, reads fairy tales to me, or watches with great interest when he sees ants moving or kittens catching mice. But he would still call me Spencer over and over again, gently and affectionately. He would always be with me, kissing and hugging me. At first, I was a little uncomfortable and nervous. After all, men have such a strong aura and are naturally cold. After spending some time together, my anxiety completely dissipated. He put the jade ring back on my neck, and I could vaguely feel that this ring was very important. Looking at his calm but determined expression, she could only swallow her refusal and secretly decided to protect it carefully in the future. His house is super big, there is plenty of food, and every meal is different. There are all kinds of entertainment rooms so you can play whatever you want. But I still like being with him. Maybe because I had a baby and I hadn't seen him for a long time, my dependence on Alpha reached an unprecedented level. I feel panicky when I can't see it for a moment. Adrian knew, and every time he would hold me in his arms and pat my back, releasing pheromones to soothe me. I felt very embarrassed and told him, "After this period of time is over, I will not cling to you all the time." "Why?" He frowned in dissatisfaction. "Spencer, if you don't want to find a husband, who else do you want to find? Huh? I beg you to stick to me." With the company of his father, the baby in my belly became much more peaceful. But not long after, Adrian took me for a comprehensive prenatal checkup. Fortunately, everything is okay. After the session, he didn't take me away, but took me to check my throat again. I didn't have any expectations for this. After all, I had been voiceless for many years. And when I was taken to the hospital, the answer I got was that it was incurable. So I was surprised and delighted when the doctor said after the examination that my vocal cords were only damaged and that there was a possibility of complete recovery through treatment. Treatment. Before I could react, I heard the person next to me say without question, "I want the best treatment plan." Afterwards, I did a lot of detailed inspections. Adrian even invited several prestigious doctors to form an expert team to discuss and implement a treatment plan specifically for me. They found that in addition to the damage to my vocal cords, an important reason why I couldn't speak was that I had suffered tremendous psychological trauma. As the psychiatrist asked me the questions calmly, my thoughts went back to that day of despair. In the collapsed house, my mother protected me under her body. Warm blood dripped onto the side of my head, dyeing my eyes blood red. I shouted and roared, trying to carry my voice beyond the layers of piled-up stones. But it took a long, long time. It lasted so long that the heartbeat on my back became calm and silent. It lasted so long that I almost lost consciousness. Still no glimmer of hope. When I woke up again, I found myself in the hospital. I was saved, but my mother, the only person in the world who was kind to me, left me forever that day. From your description, I can feel the pain, despair, and self-blame you felt at that time. But one fact is that your mother's life was taken away by an unstoppable disaster. You have done your best and made the greatest effort. Mom loves you very much, and I believe that until the last moment of her life, she will never regret her choice to protect you. Perhaps you can try to forgive yourself and walk out of the ruins of despair. I blinked blankly and clenched the big hand I was holding. 16. Vocal cord therapy and psychotherapy go hand in hand. Adrian told me that I will have vocal cord repair surgery in a week. If nothing unexpected happens, you will be able to speak soon after the operation. This is something I never thought about. I originally thought that I would never be able to speak again and would be mute for the rest of my life. Alpha hugged me from behind, leaned over slightly and put his head on my shoulder, whispering, "Don't be afraid, Spencer. The success rate of the operation is very high. I won't let you have any mistakes." I nodded slightly. He asked, "Did your aunt say anything to you at that time?" The buried memories gradually became clear. I raised my hand and gestured 2 words, "healthy and happy." "This is her blessing to me." "Yes, I will," Adrian said. "Auntie in heaven will be very happy to see you get better." I relaxed my brows, turned around and gave him a faint smile. Alpha came over and kissed him. "Spencer, baby, I want to hear your voice. I want to say good morning and good night to you. I want to hear you call my name and say you love me. At night, in bed, I want you to climb on my shoulders and moan to affirm me." The more he spoke, the more indecent he became, so I quickly covered his mouth. The night before the surgery, I had some insomnia. Lying in Adrian's arms, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. After another twist, the Alpha's hands on my waist tightened and I let out a slight gasp. Feeling the heat behind me, I immediately stopped moving. When you sleep together at night, it is inevitable that something might go wrong. But now that we have a baby, we naturally can't be as ignorant as before. The only way to relieve it is to use other methods. Sleep first, baby. Adrian got up and went to the bathroom. But when he came back, I still couldn't fall asleep. I looked at him and used sign language, I want to hear a story. Sitting up, I leaned into his arms. Alpha held the old fairy tale book in his hand and spoke slowly. There lived a timid fox in the forest. I fell asleep unknowingly to the deep and magnetic voice. 17. The operation was successful. After the recovery period, the doctor said I could try to speak again. Adrian stared at me intently, and a hint of nervousness appeared on his usually calm face. I curled my fingers and opened my mouth slightly, trying to utter a syllable. Surprise mixed with joy surged in my heart, and I realized that I could really speak. So he tried to repeat himself, Adrian. He spoke haltingly, not very skillfully, and his voice was a little hoarse. But the smile and excitement in Adrian's eyes were almost overflowing. He came over and kissed the corner of my mouth gently. Well, I'm here. Spencer is awesome. Although he has been cured because he has been voiceless for many years, it will take some time for him to speak at the level of a normal person. Adrian became my sparring partner. He would patiently help me practice my pronunciation and often coax me like a child, with words of praise one after another. In recent times, he has been with me almost all the time, so I guess his work has been delayed a lot. After I felt that his voice had almost recovered, I sent him back to work in the company. It was boring to stay at home alone, so I suggested that I continue my previous job. After all, I like it very much. Adrian immediately purchased a large amount of Suzhou embroidery materials for me, all of which were top-notch, and even had someone design a studio for me at home. When we can't meet during the day, he calls me on video. I saw him on the other end of the phone, sitting at his desk, dressed meticulously in a suit. Are you tired, Spencer? Take a break. Not tired. I spoke slowly and slowly. Are you tired? He curled his lips. I'm not tired. I just miss you too much. The handsome face of the man was magnified on the screen, and he turned his head to indicate, Baby, can you give me a kiss? Otherwise, I will have no motivation to work. After hesitating for a while, I saw that there was no one else on his side, so I slowly moved my lips over and gave the camera a light kiss. He put on a triumphant smile on his face. Thank you, baby. Love you. This guy kept saying such disgusting things. I felt a little embarrassed and lowered my head with my cheeks burning. Alpha kept asking, What about you, baby? Do you miss me? I pursed my lips. I thought so. Teen. Life went on as usual, and the baby grew bigger and bigger in my belly. Adrian and I are set to get married in a month. Recently, I have been sleeping more and always feel sleepy. That day, Adrian said he would take me to a charity auction party. Before going out, I still felt gloomy and a little sleepy. Adrian saw this and said, Why don't you not go today? Honey, just rest at home. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked up at him. Yes, it was already an agreement, and I didn't want to spoil his fun. The alpha squatted down with one hand on his knees and gently held my ankles to put on my shoes. Seeing how serious he was, I reached out and touched his head. It looks like a big wolf dog. The dinner was very lively. The hall is magnificent, with brilliant lights and dazzling brilliance. As soon as I entered, I felt that many people's eyes were focused on Adrian and me. Tonight, we both wore matching suits, which Adrian told the designer were couple outfits. Facing so many people's gazes, I felt a little uncomfortable and blinked awkwardly. Adrian, who had been holding my hand, felt it and gently stroked the back of my hand. With Alpha's comfort, I gradually calmed down. Many people here know Adrian, and they all treat him with great respect. I stayed beside him in a daze, listening to him introduce me again and again as his soon-to-be married lover and partner. Everyone was very polite to me and looked at me with curiosity and surprise. Adrian went out to discuss business, and I was a little tired from walking, so I just sat down and waited for him. I dealt with those who came to show my goodwill one by one, and was just sitting there in a daze when an unexpected person arrived. Spencer? You're here too. Brandon approached with a glass of wine in hand, and his tone was as condescending as ever. You are doing well now, but don't get too complacent, or you will be abandoned soon. Don't come back crying. I glanced at him, not wanting to talk to him, Go away. You can talk now? A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes, but he quickly calmed down and said with disgust, "So what if you're fine? You're just a pet that relies on your face. Sooner or later, you'll be hated." I was about to say something when I heard a familiar voice behind me. The tone of voice was chilling and could not be ignored. "Where did this stray dog come from? How dare you bark in front of my baby?" I turned around and saw Adrian coming. "Adrian," I called him. When the other person's eyes met mine, the frost in them melted a little. "Yeah, Spencer." He walked over to me and took my hand. The noises all around stopped and everything fell silent. Everyone watched the show in silence. Brandon's face turned pale, and his original arrogance completely disappeared. What kind of people can come in?" Adrian didn't listen to his explanation. He glanced at the security guards who came over and said, "Get them out." Brandon stood there in a daze, watching the security guard about to touch him, and blurted out, "Spencer had a strange man before. Don't be seduced by him. He is not worthy of you." Hearing this, the pressure around Adrian dropped. His face became cold and stern, and there was hostility between his brows. "This is the first time I see him like this. Is he angry?" He just sneered. "Are you looking for death? The person next to Spencer has always been me." After saying this, Adrian looked away, as if looking at him any longer would be bad luck. I ignored them and let the security guard take the man away. Later, I heard that Gavin was not able to come in either. It was just a small incident and I didn't take it seriously. Soon, the auction officially began. I sat in the VIP seat with Adrian and watched the auction items on display one by one. The theme of the auction was traditional Chinese culture. I was very interested and stared at every item with wide eyes. Adrian looked calm as he took my hand and played with it, kneading and stroking it. I would occasionally make a bid, but as long as I was amazed at the item, I would buy it without hesitation. "Too many?" I scratched his palm and reminded him. "Why did you take so many photos?" He said, "It's not much for Spencer at all." Just as I was about to say something, the next lot came out and I recognized it. It was clearly my work. It was a Suzhou embroidery work, which took me hundreds of days, using more than 10 kinds of needle techniques and expending a lot of energy to complete. After it was completed, I gave it to Adrian, hoping that he could help me find the right person and sell it. I didn't expect to see it in this way now. The starting price was as high as 800,000, which shocked me. Unexpectedly, many people came in to bid. In the end, it was Adrian who bought it for 7 million. I was so shocked that I couldn't speak clearly. This is too expensive, and why did you take a picture of it?" "It's not expensive. I like it very much." Alpha raised his eyebrows slightly. "Of course I want something Spencer embroidered himself. If you like, I can embroider it for you again." I spoke to him in a low voice. Occasionally, you can hear whispers coming from all around you. "My God, isn't that ring around his neck a ring that represents the identity of a person in power?" In the past, Adrian would never even look at anything he wasn't interested in. Today, I took so many photos for him. It seems the rumors are not credible. Adrian clearly loves this person very much. That's not the case. Did you see it just now? That kid was kicked out after just saying a few words. What is his origin? How could he be favored? The sound is not loud, but I can still hear it from time to time. It's inevitable to feel awkward and embarrassed knowing that everyone is talking about us. But soon, Adrian tilted his head and glanced, and the discussion immediately disappeared. 19. The other party did not have any special reaction at that time. He just lowered his eyes and stroked my hair, whispering, "From now on, this will be your home, our home." I raised the corner of my mouth. Yeah. Not long after, they started calling me, texting me, and sending me WeChat messages like crazy. I don't know what they are thinking, and I don't want to know. I blackmailed them and changed their phone cards. From the moment I left their house that year, I decided never to have any contact with them again. Later, I happened to see on TV that their family went bankrupt. Gavin also went to jail for committing a crime. As for Brandon, I heard that he was driving drunk, had a car accident, and is lying in the ICU with his life or death unknown. Our wedding went on as planned. The scale is not large and not many people are invited. But the wedding venue, on-site decoration, MC band, etc. are all top-notch. I got to experience a grand wedding that I had never thought of before. We also invited our neighbors from the ancient town. Looking at the familiar faces, I also smiled sincerely. Adrian raised his glass and walked towards Dayu's table. Several people stood up, flattered. I don't know what he said, but everyone burst into laughter. I can probably guess. When Adrian was still a little bit silly, the brothers Dayu taught him bad things. It was their idea to let Adrian come and give me a kiss and a hug. The excitement faded away. At night, in the bridal chamber, there were only him and I. Just a glance at each other, and we kissed each other naturally. The elegant scent of jasmine and sweet mint wafts through the air, lingering and intertwining. Alpha's breath was hot, spraying in my ear. "Spencer, is this okay?" I raised my hands and wrapped them around his neck. The body sank into the soft big bed. I saw the moonlight pouring in through the window, casting a thin layer of silver light on the two of them. 20. As she wished, every day was happy. He speaks much more fluently and his level is no different from that of ordinary people. That day, I took Adrian to the cemetery to see my mother. It's winter now, and the cold wind is blowing. Adrian stood beside me, helping me tighten my scarf and coat. At the end, he pinched my cheek. I had no choice but to look up and see the person in his eyes, wrapped up like a ball. Listen to me chattering a lot to my mother. Finally, Adrian solemnly promised, "Mom, don't worry. I will always love Spencer, protect him and treat him well for the rest of my life." After a pause, he looked down at my belly with a smile in his eyes. "And our baby." Suddenly, tiny snowflakes fell from the sky, falling like fluff, and soon covered the earth with a layer of soft white gauze. I went out without an umbrella today. Adrian turned around and put his hand on my head to shield me from the snow. I looked up and saw that his hair was quickly turned white by the snow. A strange feeling spread in my heart. I grabbed his hand and held it. "Let the snowflakes fall on your hair." Looking at him, and her reflection in his eyes, a smile appeared on her lips.